And welcome to the Huddle, KGO9's weekly streaming sports talk show. I'm Jason Barr, joined as always by Pat Parris. Pat, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jason. Getting back to some football after the bye week last weekend.
And as Arizona goes to play number 14 Iowa State, 3-0 Wildcats against the 4-0 Cyclones, we have our Huddle poll question, which refers to that game, Pat, and that is, do you think this is a winnable game for Arizona? B, going to be multiple things could be true. We've gone over that before. Winnable game. B, going to be a tough game. C, just don't get blown out. D, I'm calling an upset, meaning Arizona's going to win. Pat, I know you, so I know you're picking A, winnable game.
Yeah, that's what I picked.
So
right. here's what I'd say. Multiple things can be true, as you pointed out. It's going to be a tough game. I'd like to say I'm calling an upset, but I think winnable game is more likely, and that is multiple factors at work here. Iowa State and Arizona both coming off bye, so there's really no advantage one way or another there. Iowa State's played some very good games. As it turns out, they haven't played much competition, but neither has Arizona. So we really don't know enough about these two teams because they haven't played anybody really very good. And so, is it a winnable game? Yeah, it's a winnable game for Arizona because they're playing pretty well right now. They're playing better than we thought they would be playing right now. Iowa State's playing about where we thought they'd be playing right now. It's winnable. I'm not going to call an upset, but I think it's a winnable game.
So I went with just don't get blown out. And here's why, Pat. I want to make an historical reference to the 2012 season, which was Rich Rod's first season. And I want to tell you what happened. They started 3-0. And the third one was actually home against Oklahoma State, who was ranked at the time. And all of a sudden, the expectations kind of were reset a little bit higher. They then went to Oregon, who was ranked, top 5 in the country, and they got blown out 60-something to nothing. And that kind of reset expectations for the rest of the year, right? They were out of the top 25. Now, they did have a win later in the year at home against USC, won the New Mexico Bowl. But that blowout loss at Oregon took away a little bit from those first 3 wins. This Iowa State team does not have the explosiveness that Oregon team had.
No.
But if you go to Iowa State and you lose 31-10, that takes away a little bit from those first 3 wins. I don't think you can go there and get blown out. That's a tough place. Listen, it's going to be a tough game, to win at Iowa State. They're 4-0 and ranked 14th in the country for a reason. I'm not expecting them to go and win the game. They're not going to win every game on their schedule. But I also don't think they can get blown out in this game without taking away from those first 3 wins.
I'm not worried about them getting blown out. In fairness, everybody who knows me knows that I had a daughter go to Iowa State. I've been following the Iowa State program for, my first job in television was in Des Moines, Iowa. So I covered Iowa State extensively. So I know a lot about Iowa State football from the 30,000 foot view down here in Tucson. But I can tell you this, Iowa State is built on a really sound defense, and they're built on a sound offense, but they're not explosive offensively at all. When they win games, they win ugly games against, say, in Iowa, 16-13, things like that. So I look at it as probably not a game you have to worry about getting blown out. Of course, anything can happen, but you wouldn't expect it to. I just think it looks to me like 2 fairly evenly matched teams, especially 16-13. I thought
evenly matched, Pat. I don't think so.
I do, in the sense that they're both statistically ranked about the same all the way through. When you look at total offense and total defense and scoring and things like that, and I think Arizona, to say they're evenly matched, maybe I misspoke.
Arkansas State and Iowa are tougher opponents than a couple of the opponents that Arizona had.
I don't know that Iowa. I don't think Iowa is. I really don't. I think the similar game is the Kansas State game, where Iowa State pulled away in the second half and then held on, gave up a late touchdown, make it 24-21. I think what I see here is Arizona's probably exceeding expectations, and Iowa State is probably about where everybody thought. And because Arizona right now is exceeding expectations, and you look statistically, and they are as well, they have a chance. I'll leave it there. They have a chance.
Yeah, I'm hearing things. I heard on talk radio, somebody thought Arizona had a chance to be in the conference championship game. I heard of something about somebody throwing Brent Brennan's name in for the UCLA coach. I think expectations need to be put down a little bit. I'm afraid it's going to happen again with this game at Iowa State. I just don't want them to get, embarrassed. There's still too many issues on the offensive line. I'm worried more about that and the holding penalties than I am on the kicking game. But I think there's too many things with Arizona. I don't think they're ready to win a game like this at a number 14 Iowa State.
I just think this comes down to where is this conference at right now? And I'm not, Jason, I as I mentioned, I grew up in the Big 8 with Iowa State. I watched it go to the Big 12, and I don't see this conference being very good right now, and it's unfortunate. You see the SEC get stronger, you see the Big 10 get stronger, you see ACC may have caught up to the Big 12, maybe slightly ahead of the Big 12. So my point is, if Iowa State's the cream of the crop, it's not a great crop, right? It's
Right.
not, and so the difference between the top one or two teams, Iowa State and Texas Tech, let's just say they're the two best teams, and then the next best teams in Arizona, Arizona State, those kind of teams, there's not that big a gap right now because the conference just isn't that good. Some of the bad teams are bad. Oklahoma State is horrendous, and Mike Gundy got fired today because of it.
That's who Arizona plays at noon start on Saturday, a week from this Saturday.
Yeah, that's an interesting time. And it's also an interesting, it'll be an interesting game once we get to that point. But that just shows you that, Oklahoma State used to be one of the best teams in the Big 12. They were just 3 years ago, they finished ranked number 7 in the country after they knocked off Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl, the 2002 Fiesta Bowl. So that program's fallen mightily. And I just think that what we're seeing here is what many of us feared. I know I did, and that is Oklahoma State has to battle Oklahoma for the top players in that region, right? And Oklahoma wins out because they're in the SEC. I'm afraid that we're watching all of these Big 12 teams kind of just regress just a little bit as we see these players jump at the chance to go to the Big 10 or jump at the chance to go play in an SEC, even if it's a middle of the pack SEC or Big 10 team, you're going to pick that over the Big 12. And that's unfortunate.
Nothing stays the same, and you'd much rather be a top tier Big 12 team than you would be a middle or bottom. I think,
Sure.
SEC team, we're seeing that kind of with UCLA a little bit in what's going on with them. We talked a lot about that last week. What does Arizona have to do well, would you say, to win this game? What has to really stand out? Is it, just a consistent running game? Is it the offensive line with the holding penalties? Do you think they have to play a perfect game? What do you think you need to see from Arizona that would make you think that they could upset this team? What has to really go well for the Wildcats on Saturday?
So you've hit on those issues that they've had, and that's, you got to find a consistent running game. We've seen flashes of brilliance. Got to get better offensive line play and less holding penalties. But my focus goes right to the defense, and that is, if this defense can continue to do what it's done the first 3 weeks, they have to focus on stopping the run game for Iowa State and making sure to slow down Rocco Beck, the quarterback of Iowa State. If the focus is making sure Iowa State doesn't light up the scoreboard, then you've got a chance, and that's all you can ask for on the road. Get some great defensive play. Maybe limit on Iowa State to 21 points, and you try to outscore them. And that's really the game plan for me is great defensive play, stop Rocco Beck, and you've got a chance.
I looked at some of the Iowa State stats. Their two leading tacklers are their starting defensive backs. Does that tell you anything about the defense?
Well, I think that sometimes that's misleading in the sense that maybe they run protections where the defensive backs are in the scheme of the defense when it comes to the run stopping. Maybe they're the ones that go fill the holes, and maybe they get a lot of tackles.
Okay, that makes sense because
yeah.
It's not a defense where people are the other team's getting into the secondary and the defensive backs are making
no, and it's not a team that gives up a lot of yards and a lot of points. They're actually ranked pretty similar to what. So Arizona's defense right now is total defense. They're number 7 in the country giving up yards. They're 7th fewest yards given up. They're number 6 in scoring defense, only 8.6 points per game they give up. Some of that is the opponent. Don't get me wrong. You don't want to hold your hat too much on that. But Iowa State, they're ranked 38th in giving up just 297 yards a game. and they're ranked number 22 in scoring, giving up 14.25. So both defenses are pretty stingy. They're not giving up lots of yardage. If their defensive backs are making tackles, that just could be also that, maybe they're good run stoppers, those defensive backs, and maybe teams have to throw and they're able to corral the wide receivers without picking up too much yardage.
Jason Barr, Pat Parris here on the Huddle. And I did mention earlier for the Huddle poll question, that is something that people can go and vote. Just go to Kagun's X account, Twitter account, if you want to, vote on how you think the game is going to play out here for this Saturday. We'll read that at the end of this show. Pat, a lot going on in football and sports, and we'll get back to the Arizona-Iowa State game, and we'll end on that. But a bunch of things going on, right now. And we can tackle a couple of them. I thought one that's kind of interesting to bring up, that is kind of an interesting debate, is I think the Chiefs have a little bit of an issue here as we talk NFL with Travis Kelce. And I think it's not glaring and obvious because NFL teams, obviously a tight end doesn't have a batting average. But Pat, if Travis Kelce had a batting average right now, I think it would be in the low 200s. He looks a little slow out there. I think he's getting by on know-how and on grit and on experience. And then he's kind of fighting with the head coach a little bit. It doesn't look like a good situation here to me.
I think he's a microcosm of what's going on with the Chiefs. I think it's a little too easy to just say, Travis Kelce isn't as productive as he should be. Well, that could go for everybody on that offense, including Patrick Mahomes. It's amazing how I think I brought it up maybe after the first week, how
Patrick Mahomes' skills haven't diminished.
But Patrick Mahomes is also a product of an offense that was really clicking the last few years too. It's not just Patrick Mahomes. Yes, his ability to extend plays and make the amazing throws and the ad libs was all well and good. He doesn't have time to make any of those ad libs. So all of a sudden you're going to blame Travis Kelce because Patrick Mahomes doesn't have time to ad lib and run around and make plays. I think the issue really gets down to, it's an end of a dynasty window for the Chiefs, and they have to retool right now because the NFL caught them and passed them. And they caught them last year, Jason. They made the Super Bowl, but again, you look at the AFC and you think, well, why didn't the Bills? Bills make that.
Also, all those calls they got last year in those one-score games,
and that just helped them. It helped the Chiefs further that idea that they're not done yet. But I think they were done last year, and I think. That's probably the Chiefs' biggest problem is the NFL passed them by, and because of whether it's calls or the Bills not quite being ready and figuring it out, the AFC torch hadn't been passed, but it's going to be passed now. Either the Bills or the Ravens. Still think the Ravens are going to be good, even though they lost last night. I think they just got to figure out their defense. But I think that the time has come for the Chiefs to kind of retool, and I think Travis Kelce. He doesn't look good, Jason. I'll give you that. But this is a guy who's earned to go out on his own accord, and I think
work like that, though.
Yeah,
the example you have to be very, very careful. I do. Anybody does. Whenever you try to say a player's finished or insinuate that, and the example that I'll give is when Detroit thought that Jack Morris was finished, right? And then he went and won. He had that performance in the World Series against the Twins, one of the all-time great performances. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the Toby Keith song. I'm not as good as I once was, but I can be as good once as I ever was, right? I get that. Travis Kelce could still have a big game, but I'll tell you what, he doesn't. It doesn't look good to me. It just doesn't. He looks like it looks like he's at the end. That's what I'd say. The Ravens kind of carried Ray Lewis a little bit in that last Super Bowl. He was clearly in his last
year. No question, yeah.
And it looks that way for Kelce. Anyway. Another topic I wanted to bring up, Pat, and this is just kind of happening now, so we're still reading about it, has to do with his balls and strikes for baseball next year with Major League Baseball. You can now challenge 2 strike or ball calls a game, and you still get your challenges as if you're right. But here's what I don't see, and I heard this term where we're seeing it on the screen, robo-umpire. I don't think it's a robo-umpire. I think it's just that square that we see when we watch Major League Baseball, and it tells us if it's a ball or a strike. To me, I think you're just delaying the inevitable. Let the computers call the balls and strikes at this point. I know baseball's always been a very conservative kind of yesteryear game and the whole thing, but to me, this is just another step closer to having balls and strikes called by computers and machines. It doesn't mean we have to lose a job. You can still have the home plate umpire. He can be the crew chief. He can call the outs, when a player's trying to, a score run. Okay. He can make sure the game's being handled well. But I think it just looks silly as I watch a Major League Baseball game, and you could just see every single mistake that the umpire makes on every single pitch. Who would want that in their job?
Yeah.
I mean, do they really want that? I wouldn't want that in my job. Imagine we're doing the news, Pat, and every single time we make a mistake, the viewer sees it on the screen. Oh, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. No, that's what it looks like. It looks silly. If you're going to have those squares, just have the umpires call the ball. Just have the computers call the balls and the strikes. And the last thing I'll say on that, because I'm kind of going a little long here, is it comes down to this question. Do you feel that the umpires are part of the game? If you do, and that's okay, and you feel like the pitcher working with the umpire and getting the corner call the way those Atlanta Braves pitchers used to do with Glavine and the whole thing.
Yeah.
If you feel like that's part of the sport, and that's okay if you feel that way, and the umpires are part of it, then okay, leave the umpire in there. But if you don't feel that the umpires are part of the game, and I think most people don't think they're part of the game. If you don't think that they're part of the game, then just let the computer call the balls and strikes.
So here's my take, Jason. The beauty of baseball is the history and the tradition. The problem with baseball is the history and the tradition, because that means it's slow to change. And I think what you're seeing is this excruciatingly slow pushback to change that's been going on now for a decade. And it began with allowing broadcasters to show the strike box anyway, and then we eventually got the ability to pinpoint the ball every time as it. Remember, the strike zone's really at the very front of home plate, right? That square is in front of the home plate, and so once they were able to pinpoint the dot of the ball going through that strike zone at the front of the plate, then we really got to see when the umpires were making mistakes, and the game, is in some ways is better because we know this where the strike is, but in some ways it's worse. I think it's inevitable. I think Major League Baseball even knows it's inevitable that they're going to be going to the automated balls and strikes. I just
you
think
still have linesmen in tennis.
I think this is the right, and you can then challenge and go look at it. But I think what we're seeing is the slow plodding along evolution of baseball, finally embracing some technology, and eventually they're going to get this right. And I would have said that before. 10 years ago I was against it. Now I'm for it. I think you have to go. We're too much a video game society, and in the video games we know exactly whether something is a ball or a strike or a touchdown or not a touchdown. And I think you're going to see Major League Baseball get there eventually. It's just frustratingly slow.
They've got two challenges does each team have, and then they only get to keep those challenges if they're correct. So the part about it that I like is it's going to reduce the bickering that goes on from the dugout to the home plate. I don't like that bickering. I'd rather there not be the bickering and not be the incorrect calls, because normally when you do have that bickering, the dugout's correct, right? Or they wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
So I like that it's taking that part out of it. But and I think the biggest issue is that, like I said, they don't want jobs being taken away. I don't think this is going to reduce any jobs.
No, it never was. That was never the intent of even when they've done it in the minor league system. You still have to have somebody at home plate, and that's not going to take away a job. To me, it lessens the if you went to full automation for balls and strikes, doesn't that lessen the pressure on the umpire? So
Right.
he can so he doesn't have to worry about being wrong. X amount of time, 7% of the time or whatever they're wrong. So I think it would take the pressure off. There are going to be some egos that push back. There's a lot of tradition that pushes back. But I'm with you. I just don't see, that whole idea that an umpire and a pitcher, can kind of work together and you get your calls if you're the pitcher a little bit on that one umpire. But it's a different umpire. It's one of the four umpires rotating every time. Your chances.
Yeah, but those Braves pitchers did that.
There's no question. But that became kind of a a story in and of itself, and almost became kind of like you're part. And then the umpires started feeling like they were part of it, and
That's what I'm
it's
saying.
a bad situation. You don't want that. Umpires are there to officiate the game. You shouldn't even notice them most of the time. It's the way it is in any sport. You should not really notice. And when we see it all the time at McHale. When you see one of the officiating crews, you're like, here we go.
Well, do you like it though when the umpire gives a demonstrative strike three and kind of goes not? Do you think that's part of the sport?
No, it's
Some
like
people might. Some people might think that's part of the
it's
part of the entertainment of the sport.
a
I mean, I'm not making this
well-timed
up. Leslie Nielsen made fun of it in
right.
Naked Gun, right?
Enrico Palazzo in Naked Gun.
And they made fun of it in Naked Gun when he was like,
yeah. But and a demonstrative or a not overly dramatic, just a strike at the right time, or you strike three, you're out. That's fine. They're taught to do that. Yeah, the guys that go overboard, that means they think you're paying good money to come see them officiate instead of seeing the best players in the world play at the major league level.
All right. So yeah, I mean, we'll see where that takes us and how many years they do that. When it comes to rule changes, I do like the dynamic kickoff in football, Pat, but I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up. I don't know that there's been a touchdown. I think the issue with the dynamic kickoff, it's reducing concussions, and that's what it's for. And that's great. But I don't think anybody's returning it for touchdowns the way they used to.
No, I don't, because now what do you think? What do you think special team coaches are doing? They're doing what you do as a defensive coach, and you're scheming how you're going to stop a return. And then on the other side of it, those coordinators are trying to figure out a blocking scheme that's going to work, and there's just not a lot of room. We think there's a lot of room, but really they're just so bunched up together right there that it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
All right, let's circle back now to our huddle poll question, and that has.
By the way, real quick, as you do that, Tyler Loop had a really good onside kick last night. Did you see that? The cover team just didn't get down on it as the Ravens were trying to get the ball back there.
You know what I saw in the distance? I was in the newsroom and I watched the onside kick.
Yep.
But the way I was watching, it's like I think that they're recovered 6% of the time.
Yes.
So I'm like not looking at an onside kick to think, oh my gosh, are they going to get it? I'm looking at the onside kick just to make sure I don't miss anything, that it's not one of those.
Yeah,
6%.
it was 1 for 11.
They want to change that from what I've read
to
make it so that they might do a rule change somehow to make it so that it's more than 6%. Because right now it's almost a formality. It's really is.
It really is, and it was blocked well on the receiving team, but the Ravens just didn't quite get there early. But when that ball hits that second time and pops straight up, that's what you want. He did a good job. Just didn't get it for the Ravens.
Pat, it looks like sentiment's a little negative here towards Arizona football, according to our Huddle poll question, and whether or not fans think they're going to go to Iowa State and win. Just don't get blown out. I would have thought winnable game, which was what you picked. I picked just don't get blown out. I would have thought those numbers would be almost reversed, right?
Yeah.
And 3%, only 3%.
It surprises me a little bit that it's that kind of pessimistic. To me, either winnable game or going to be a tough game would be the winners. But yeah, I bet maybe people are still on that, let's wait and see kind of mentality. It doesn't, yes, they pass the eye test to a certain point, does Arizona football, but wait till they play somebody, right? Well, this is somebody, so we'll see.
All right, Pat, you don't know this, but next Tuesday's Huddle might be on the road. So Arizona women's basketball has its media day Tuesday afternoon. Next Tuesday. And so they contacted me and they're like, they don't know that, when they were putting it together, they're like, are you going to attend? I said, well, I don't know. It's in the middle of our show. Is at 3:00? And they said, well, is there a way you could do the show there at McHale? And I said, well, if we put up a green screen for me and bring me a player, possibly.
Yeah.
So nothing's set for sure.
Okay.
But I just,
maybe Becky.
Everybody, Pat's hearing this for the first time.
Okay, I'd go for broke. I'd say bring Becky Burke on again. We had her on once. Why not have her on again? Maybe.
Okay, I'll try. Yeah. But we're gonna be learning these players because only one of them is back from last year.
Right. No, it's a refresh for sure, and she's doing well in future recruiting already too. So we'll see.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
It seems as though, and we'll get to this next week. People are responding to her personality.
Yes. Yes, I think you're right. I think
That's
you're
the
right.
sense I'm getting right now.
And isn't that why you go to a mid-major and grab a coach who also has obviously power conference
Yeah. Oh, I'm
experience
so
as a
impressed by her
player and a
resume.
coach? But
So
yeah,
impressed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, that's more for next week. I hope maybe we'll be talking about an Arizona win, but the fans certainly don't think so. And but we'll see. All right, for Pat Parris, I'm Jason Barr. This has been the Huddle, KGUN 9's weekly sports talk show. We'll see you probably next Tuesday at this time.